to this London Embroidery School Stitch Along. I'm your host for today, Natasha, and I'm going to be working on this little Valentine's Day prep design that I just quickly put together earlier to give us something to work on whilst we had a little chat today. Hopefully some of you were able to see our post earlier that we were going to go live today. And therefore have been able to join us. So if that's you, thank you very much if you are joining us live. If you're watching this later and you're catching up, then we also appreciate you joining us that little bit later on. It's great to have you here regardless. So as I say, I'm working on this little design that we've put together for Valentine's Day. It should be really cute. It's sort of based on those scroll work kind of tattoos and that sort of thing that you see, but we just wanted to highlight something that would use some of the monogramming skills that you might be able to pick up on a class with us. It's one of my favourite classes, it's one of our classics, and so I personally think that it's a great one for anyone to take. But it would be great to hear from you guys to see if you have tried monogramming before. How have you got on with it? Is it something you found difficult? There are aspects of it that people find quite difficult. Or is it something that you really enjoy and do very regularly? Let me know. Hopefully I'm not too rusty today. This is my first time coming on live in quite a while. I've been away, but I'm back now. So it's really nice to jump on here to try and have a bit of a chat with you guys. With Valentine's Day, it's always one where we think about, sort of romantic partners and that sort of thing. But, if you were making something for someone you love, it doesn't have to be a romantic partner by any means. It could be for yourself. We very much advocate for a little bit of self-love. That's always good, and you definitely deserve something beautiful and embroidered when you're going to the lovely task of making it. It could also be for a child, like with the monogramming skills. They're great, obviously, for putting letters or names on everything, and you know what it's like once you have children. They need their name on everything. Number one, because they like it, but number two, because otherwise it's going to get lost. So if it's done in a really beautiful way, isn't that even better? For me, that is part of the beauty of monogramming and why I think it's really worth learning about how to embroider lettering, is because once you have learnt, you can literally embroider anything that you can sew through. Like, let that just sink in for a minute. You can embroider and personalise anything that you can get a needle through. So the realm of possibilities just opens up hugely the moment that you kind of unlock that skill. We are sort of so sure that you're going to enjoy it once you get started that the of our monogramming classes, it's a series of 3 classes which does build in intensity in each class, but the first one is free so that you can just have a go with the basics, get started with a bit of a script font, and just get some lettering down and see how you feel about it. And even then, after that, the other 2 classes are £15 each. They're online classes, so you just pay for the class itself. All of the materials and equipment needed are all sort of very easily accessible items. We encourage you to work on your own pre-existing garments or items. It might be something like a face cloth or a hanky or an item of clothing, an accessory. All of those things are great for monogramming. So the setup cost to getting started with monogramming is really quite low. So do get stuck in there and give it a try. As I say, the first class is free. So what have you got to lose? Very, very little. You will find it on our website in the online classes section. There is a whole tab for monogramming, which has all of those classes in it, as well as some of the more extensive or specific lettering classes we have for once you've begun your monogramming journey. But we would strongly suggest that you begin with the three-part monogramming class so that you can grab those basics, get them well underway, and then you can move on from there. Right, I should just check in. Thank you to everyone who has joined so far. There's quite a few of you. That's always nice to see. So Lauren J. Schneider says, does it matter what colour the fabric is that you use underneath the handkerchief? No. So thank you. That's a good point that you've brought up, and was something that I was going to mention today, but I have window mounted this piece. So that basically means that, I don't know whether you can see my finger underneath, but there's the fabric and then there's a little gap here where I have cut out a hole or a window, and it's into that space that I am working. So the base fabric actually has nothing to do with the embroidery whatsoever, and will be irrelevant to it the moment we remove it from the window mount. And the window mounting is a really great skill, particularly for monogramming. It's something that we go into in extensive detail in the third class because it's such an essential kind of adjacent skill to monogramming. Because it's really the key to unlocking how to work on anything that's not just a flat piece of fabric that you can naturally frame up in a hoop easily. It means that you can just mount up anything that you can get a needle through, and then you can just stitch away. We do have a tip on that on our YouTube channel as well, again explaining the window mounting in a lot of detail about how you would go about it, how you begin, and cutting your shape and everything in more detail than I can probably do justice to here today. For that specific skill. So do head over there and have a little look at that one because, as I say, it's really worthwhile. The stitch that I'm using today is an outline stitch, which is perfect for monogramming, as it allows you to create a really smooth line, really get that movement going with your stitching, and create really smooth curves, which is what is essential with monogramming, is trying to make sure that you're always getting really smooth edges, that everything flows nicely and looks consistent. I'm doing that with a 2-strand thread today, just because I wanted a little bit of thickness, but still to get those fine details. Don't want them getting lost. We will have to wait and see just how far through this design I managed to get in the time that we have today. But I'm hopeful that we'll make a good amount of headway on this design, just working our way around. If you do have any questions like Lauren did, please do feel free to pop them in the comments underneath, and I will be trying to check the phone periodically as I give my eyes a little bit of a rest every now and then from the stitching. But if I miss your comment, terribly sorry. It's just that I'm looking at the stitching and not at the screen. But I will try and flick back through afterwards and scoop up any questions that I might have missed. Now I need a fresh thread. Let's take those out of the way. So of my 6 strands, I still have 4 left. We're working with a fingertip to elbow length piece of thread. It's a little bit dark on screen for you guys. Shall I try and turn up the light a little bit? Sorry, 1 second. Might be jiggly for a second. Ooh. Is that better? Okay, So we have a question from Rachel Mary F. Hi there, what are you working on here, please? It's just a little design for Valentine's Day that we put together to just show off some monogramming skills. I think this one would be particularly lovely. So the piece that I'm actually working on is technically not a hanky, it's a cocktail napkin. I know, bougie, right? But it would be a lovely moment, I would have thought, if you were perhaps preparing something for a partner. You know, could that be a nice little Valentine's Day gesture to come home to a homemade cocktail with, a little napkin underneath that says love you? Might be quite a cute little idea. I know with my partner, sometimes it is tricky to carve out those moments together. So even if it is just for a few moments within a busy day, because we've both got an awful lot going on, then that's quite a nice little touch. Something I think that he would appreciate. Items that I have been using today and will be using throughout this design. Obviously, I have, as I say, the item itself that I'm embroidering on could be anything. We also have the sewing thread that I used in order to do the window mounting. I used that in an embroidery needle size 10, which is my personal preference, and the one that I've gone ahead to carry on with for the embroidery itself. So you can see it's quite a fine needle. It has quite a long but narrow eye. We've also got 2 colours of embroidery thread to be working with. I've got this sort of dark grey that I've gone for the banner itself, and then I'm going to be using this lovely punchy corally red for the lettering. I needed some pins when I was also doing the mounting. Of course, it's always important to have a pair of snips or scissors on hand. Do make sure that the snips you're using are maintained well for cutting thread. You know, don't be accidentally cutting things out of a magazine or something with them. That is not going to end well for anybody. Also make sure that nobody else does that to your embroidery snips or scissors, because that's just so upsetting. So try and keep them away from other little hands or anyone who doesn't know just how important your embroidery snips quality is and needs to be looked after. Sorry, I can see that there's a couple more messages. We've got one from Mila who says, awesome, greetings from Argentina. Hello, lovely to have you joining us from so far afield today. Thank you very much. What else have we got? Lauren Day Schneider again. Do you normally wash the item prior to stitching on it? I would probably suggest that is a good idea, yes. I'm going to fully admit that I did not do that for this item today, but that is good practice, generally speaking. You know, wash and iron it, just make sure that it's not got any additional treatments on it. Always something good to think about. Rachel Mary F. Will you undo the yellow stitches once done? Is that used for stability? Yes, so that is part of the window mounting process. They're literally just there to hold everything together whilst we work so that it can be stretched in the frame. But once we're done, all of those will come out. That's why you can see they're quite sparse, and they just will pull out when we're ready. I used a long and short stitch for that. That's why you can see, obviously, they vary in length as it goes around. Which just sort of spreads the load of the tension whilst you're working on it. So you want to make sure that 365 degrees of the embroidery piece. 365 degrees? Oh dear, that's my brain just meshing things together. 360 degrees, 365 days a year, is under control whilst you're working. So I'm just going to head onto a new thread because I've finished up here. I will finish that off later. There's no need to finish that now. So it's starting a new thread. I'm going to leave the knot on the surface, as is always good practice, and form some stab stitches on the line, which I'm going to be covering over in a second. That they're going to actually hold everything down and into place. And then again at the end, once I've finished off my thread ends, I can then remove the knots too and release the piece from the base, and everything should be nice and tidy. Some people find the difference between outline stitch and stem stitch a little bit either confusing or misleading. I am using outline stitch today. The difference being is that with outline stitch you stretch out in front of the previous stitch and then work back into the last one. As with stem stitch, you are beginning inside of the existing stitch. So let me just turn this corner and I will explain in more detail what I mean about that. So we'll just come around here. Okay, so with outline stitch, you can see the stitch comes up forward of the last stitch, and then I come back and will push the previous stitch kind of down and out of the way so that I can tuck the end of my current stitch into it. So if we do that again, we go out to come up, then we press the stitch down so I can get in and underneath it and bring it into line. This is what makes the outline stitch a great choice when you're trying to do smooth curves, because each stitch leans on the previous stitch and kind of forces them to work together. So it makes it really smooth around the corners so that, you get a nice continuous line and a sort of twisted kind of rope-like look almost to the quality of the line that you create. If we were doing stab stitch, we would be coming up inside of the stitch already and then coming down forward of that stitch, but we're not. We're coming up forward of the last stitch and then we're going back to meet it. The way I like to remember it is that outline stitch comes up outside of the previous line, as with stem stitch stems from within the previous stitch. Works for me at least, that little thought to get the definition between the two. If you think you'd like to have a go at this design itself, perhaps if you could pop a little comment in underneath, it would be great to see if there is the interest, and then maybe we can try and make it available on the website if you want to try your own Love You scroll pattern. It would just be great to hear from you guys. Those of you who are familiar with our feed will have also seen that we are very excited about the heart patch as well for Valentine's Day this year. It's another really cute little design, which unfortunately I don't have one in front of me today, which is a shame. But it's really cute little heart with a picot beaded edge that we can show you how to do ourselves with the kit. It has a few little gold work touches as well, adding an outline within the design itself. So that would make a lovely gift to whether you are making the item yourself and then gifting the result, or whether you are gifting the kit. As there's a few people, it would seem, from around the world, how much do you guys celebrate Valentine's Day? How big a deal do you feel it is to you? Would be interesting to hear, because I always think that there's a bit of a different take in each country on kind of like, it's how relevant it is to you. So it would be cool to hear from you guys. We have a few different nationalities in the studio, and the responses to that really varies. Also, is it the same day? We're preparing for this now, unsurprisingly, because Valentine's Day in the UK is the 14th of February. But is that also the same for you wherever you are today? Since being back from my break, I have been working on a few new bigger classes for you guys that I'm really excited about and looking forward to sharing hopefully later on this year. So it would be cool to hear what you guys are excited about. Is there anything in particular you're hoping to learn this year? Is there something you've been desperate to try but you've not as yet been able to kind of have a go at? Or is there something you feel is like really missing from our repertoire that you think we might be able to help you with? I actually don't think I want to put that up there now. I'm going to finish this thread and start a new one. Okay, let's again just pop that over here out of the way. We will finish that later on. Actually, let's try some lettering for a change. So I'm going to bring over my red thread, which I've just got a knot in. That's not very helpful. So once again, I'm going to measure a fingertip to elbow length piece of thread. We always say to use fingertip to elbow length, simply because it's just a really good controllable length of thread that won't get away from you. If your thread is very long, then you're often going to struggle with knots and twists. It happens all the time, and it's something that new embroiderers often come up against, and it's just so frustrating. However, if you try and work with a fingertip to elbow length piece of thread, then you only really need to be working with, the lower part of your arm. You're never getting the shoulder involved in it, which really helps to control just how kind of tiring the embroidery itself is on your body, which is something to take into consideration. It's often something that gets overlooked, particularly when you're starting off your embroidery journey. But, we want you to start off with good habits and to start in a way that allows you to hopefully, go the distance with a new interest, a new hobby. If we can get you into good habits right from the start, then hopefully that should help to counteract some of the bad ones that might, put a downer on things later on once you've become naturally, truly obsessed with embroidery, like myself. So just covering over those stab stitches that went onto the line there. I've dropped down to a single strand for the lettering, again just to get that fine finish. Also just for a little contrast with the outside edge. Let's have a bit of definition between the two. When we drop down to one, you can probably see that it is very fine, but the twist starts to get a bit lost because it is so small. Your eye doesn't really recognize that there's a twist in there. It's just a very smooth line. we need to come that little bit smaller as we come round the bends to just maintain that definition. I did see someone made a comment, sorry I didn't see your name, just saying that you'd love to see the design. If you want to see it kind of like right now, it is posted on our Instagram, the draft, so you can just see the pencil version of the design. But equally, if you hang on for a little bit, we will reveal the design in stitches one at a time. And lengthen those stitches out again a little bit as we head down the straight. It's just that little bit more freedom to open them up a bit. Each stitch is probably about 2 to 3 millimeters in length max. You don't really want them to be getting much longer than that, else they start to get a bit baggy and they don't look as sharp. But again, I've got another little corner to come around here, so we're going to have to shorten them up again. The lettering styles that I'm working on today are really more focused on what we cover in the second monogramming class, because that one is a script style. It has the sort of that flow of handwritten lettering rather than, typed fonts. But the approach to working on an item, as we're showing today, is more so covered in part 3 of the monogramming series. A little bit higher. My draft is just looking a little bit faint there under my lights. Always good to have your draft in front of you so that you can kind of see what you're working towards. Important not to lose sight of where you're trying to go with it. The other thing I love about stem stitch and outline stitch is that you can see that it moves quite quickly for hand embroidery. You can really get a good pace going on it once you have found your flow. And an important little tip to bear in mind, I always think, when you're working with lettering is to try and make sure that you've got enough time carved out to do all your lettering in one go. And you're probably wondering why I would say that. But with lettering embroidery, because it's such a recognisable form, being that we all know what the letters should look like, that any little kind of like difference that you might come across in your stitching can be quite obvious. And so therefore, if you're stitching and you walk away from that stitching for a while and then come back to it another day, you might be carrying a little bit more tension in your hand another day, or less tension, and that ends up kind of showing in your stitching. So even though you're obviously, like, it's being stitched by the same person and you're using the same colour thread and stuff, it just may not look quite the same. Now I want there to be a corner for the top of the V, so that's why I ended my line and I'm starting a new one fresh. With stem and outline stitches, each line needs a little half stitch at the beginning and the end to finish the line, and so that comes back to the point that I was making earlier, with each stitch leaning on the previous stitch. Therefore you can't leave like the last full stitch just as a single, because it won't be a complete width line. So this will be the final stitch of this V, but then I need to come in back where the end of that stitch is and just put in another half a stitch, which just makes the thickness of that line continuous. Otherwise you end up, yeah, as I say, with a little missing half. And then when we start on the E here, although we're going into the same point of the E, the point of the V, we just need to start it as a new line so that we don't get that smooth rolling curve where we don't actually want it to be a smooth rolling curve. We want it to be a corner point. Again, shortening up the stitches now. Just heading up here. If you have any stitching questions that you want me to cover whilst I'm on, please do feel free to leave the comments down below and I will try and check in with those. Doesn't necessarily need to be about monogramming specifically if that's not what your question is about. Obviously though, would like to keep it to stitching specific today, but yeah, any technique I'm open to chatting about. Coming in here with my stiletto just to reposition a couple of the stitches, adjust their tension a little bit. Can be really useful when you're monogramming, just to kind of like push them one way or the other. It can make such a difference to the overall finish of your lettering. My thread is getting a little bit short here. I would normally suggest at this point that you change to a new thread, although I'm like right at the end of this line, so let's see if we can make it. Okay, so we did. That's great. Right, let's stick that over to one side, finish that off later. Just grabbing a new thread. How is your January going so far? Did you make any New Year's resolutions? Are any of them stitching related? And have you stuck to them so far? That's the big question, isn't it? As we head almost towards the third week of January, are you still at it? I can see I've got a comment here. So Doris, mother of Jack Russell's, looks great. Thank you very much. Do you use the weave of the fabric as a guide for the letters? No, is the short answer. So I do have the draft here that I created earlier of the design that I wanted to make, which I pricked and pounced and has that applied onto the fabric. So that's the slight, shadow of the design that hopefully you guys can see that I'm working into and what I am following. The weave of the fabric actually is on the bias because I've angled this into this corner point, which does make things slightly more tricky for me. It does mean that's why there's this little bit of movement in the fabric, even though it's window mounted. It's not enough to cause me any problems really, but a tighter surface is nicer to work on. But it's simply because the weave, the warp and the weft are going not perpendicular to the angle at which I'm working it. So it's not quite working with me on that front as it could, but it's still very usable, and it's worth trying out different fabrics and playing around with it and working in different orientations and seeing how much that changes things for you. Is it enough to be problematic? Do you need to try a different approach, or is it actually just a bit more challenging but still attainable? Now, at the moment I can't see the bottom of that lettering at all, so I am just going to try and draw that in a little bit more strongly for myself. Going to push into the existing stitching to create a join. For this lower part of the Y. Again, we have to get very short and very tight around the corners. Then can lengthen back out when we head into a straighter section. My New Year's resolution this year was to try and do a little bit more drawing for myself. So I have started a page a month on a sketchbook, and trying to do just a little doodle about my day every day. I'd say I've had mixed success at keeping that up. I'm going to say 50%. If I looked at it right now, yeah, I'd say there'd be like 7 or 8 doodles. So I haven't quite managed to do every day, but we're trying. Got to keep trying with these things, and hopefully, if I can, I think they say if you do something 40 times, then it becomes a habit. So in a couple of months, I might have managed to do it 40 days, and then can hopefully say that it has become a successful habit by that point, but who knows. So that's what I sort of challenged myself to try and work on this year. And then we've just got the U to go. Maybe we'll have one more stitch. There we are. Right, let's treat this as a corner point and head down this way now. This fabric that I'm working on is a reasonably open weave, which is quite nice to work on actually. Makes the drafting a little bit more challenging, just because there's a lot of air in between the weave, but it does mean that, the needle passes nice and easily through everything, which does make it quite pleasant. Just tuck that in there. For this little tail end. Angle of your stitches with outline stitch and stem stitch is so important. Making sure that they are twisting consistently in the same direction. It's what will make the big difference between your stitching looking sharp and tidy or your stitches looking quite messy. Okay, I think we just need to give that a little poke. Sorry, now I'm putting my hand in front of the light for this bit. There we go. Let's see if I can give you guys a close-up. What's going so far? I'm feeling quite pleased with that. Okay, let's jump back in there with the grey. So yeah, I'm just going to leave this red thread again to finish off later. You guys don't need to watch that. That's not very exciting. Let's pick up the grey again. How are we doing for time? Not too bad. We'll carry on for a little bit. Probably won't make it through the whole design today, but that's okay. I'll get it finished off and get you guys a picture up on Instagram to follow so you know how it went. As we usually do with most of these stitch-alongs, I will also be making a full recording of this to go on our YouTube channel for posterity. So yeah, should you wish to see kind of the whole process from start to finish, I will include a little bit about showing the drafting of this piece, drawing it up, prick and pouncing it, and then actually doing the stitching itself. Any of these terms that I mentioned, if you're not familiar with, and you're like, what is she on about, prick and pounce? We have so many videos up on our YouTube channel. We've been working on them for quite a while now, and that there is a great library of stuff on there, which will explain a lot of the terms that I know I'm just casually throwing around today, expecting you to know. So if I've piqued your interest on any of this stuff, do check out our tips and tricks section, because that's where we put a lot of great free information about embroidery tips and tricks, unsurprisingly, as the name suggests. So things like how to window mount, pricking and pouncing, you know, the difference between stem stitch and outline stitch, all of that stuff. We have specific videos on each of those things, if you want to know more detail about any of those things, as I say, that I'm just like casually mentioning and moving on. However, you may already know some of those bits. So yeah, I expect though that there's something there that may just be able to elevate your stitching just a step, might just make something a little bit easier, ease a pain point that you might have when it comes to embroidery. If we can make it that little bit easier, we absolutely will. And we try and do that by sharing the little differences that we do as embroiderers who, you know, embroider every day in a studio. So they're the bits that either make things faster or make things easier when you are doing it every day. That could just, make it a little bit easier. I can see Doris, mother of Jack Russell, says, looks really starry eyes. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you for hanging on. You've been watching for ages, I can see. It's nice to see people do kind of hang on for the whole design. I appreciate some people just need to dip in and out. How often do you watch something for, 40 minutes on Instagram? Not very often. So any of you that have stayed on to watch the design for a while, thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Always nice to know there are people on the other end that I am actually chatting to. So just coming round this swirl. I don't know whether you can see there, but the stitches naturally want to fall inwards on themselves because of the twist, and so each new stitch pushes the previous stitch up and out. Got a little vertical to go in there. And we need one on this side just to break up the scroll. And we need one on this side. Come from about here, straight up. Not forgetting to go back and put the half stitch in at the bottom to complete the line. And then we need one this side as well. It's funny how with these little verticals, the moment you put them in, it makes it look 3D. But without them, it looks very 2D. Sorry, I can see I've got a question here. So Shazriel says, is there information on tidying up the back of a piece, as I'm interested in how you secure the ends neatly without it unraveling over time. Yes, so now I don't think we've got that specifically as a tip. Maybe that needs to be a new tip for our tips and tricks section. But what I've been doing here is with the knots, you can see they're all on the outside, and then we do stab stitches to start. The stab stitches remain in and underneath the line, and then I'm going to weave the backs in at the end. So that's how I'm going to finish everything off. Perhaps I would do one of those for you. I do need to do one now. I'll just do one for you now. How's that? Right. Let's flip you over. Now, I don't know if the angle is going to be as great for filming, but we'll see. We'll give it a try. Can we get over there? Yes, we can. Yes. Yes, we can. Okay. Can you see that okay? I think so. It's not quite as nice an angle. Hopefully you'll still be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, thumbs up. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the feedback. Right, here we go. So when I'm on the back, and this is what I'm going to do with all of these loose threads, I will just pull them through to the back side again, thread them up in a new needle. Doesn't need to be as small a needle. You can use a much bigger needle for this one. It's much easier to thread up than an embroidery 10, if that is your preference. But literally just catch the working thread in underneath some of your existing stitches and pull it tight. And then I'm really just working almost on the spot to just pass that thread in and underneath the existing working stitches, and we just weave it in. So you don't see the finish, it just exists into the back of the embroidery. Do that at least 3 times. I'd probably say max 5, depends on your anxiety levels about unraveling, but that should be more than sufficient. And then I'm happy to cut that nice and short. You really can't see that there's any finishing going on in that line. Let me see if I can bring that closer to the camera for you. So in just above my fingernail there is where we've done the finish. So it literally just like wraps in and around the existing stitching, not going through the fabric itself, only holding on to the embroidery. So let's do that again. Just grabbing myself a secondary needle. Here we go. As I say, you can use a bigger one, so you can pull any one of these threads through to the back again. Thread it up into your needle. And just shallow, really shallow angle, catching the back of the existing stitches. I'm actually using the my non-dominant hand, my free hand, to just sort of add a little bit of pressure to the right side of the embroidery to kind of make it a little bit bulbous, so it makes it easier to just catch the embroidery without touching the fabric at all. And then again, trim that off, throw that away. Right, let's head back to the right side. We might actually get this done. So, you know, that would be exciting. Let's see if I can do it. Speed stitching. So we've just got this side of the banner, the back of the banner to do. And then we've got, oh, the verticals of the top part of the scroll. Okay, this might be achievable. So again, dropping that knot down on the front, stab stitches to begin on the line. Just try and make that join together and look continuous. Where's my stiletto gone? I buried it. No, it's fine. Found it. Back at that. The other thing we like out is that which is why the stitch form use because thread with there. I don't know the stitching. Push off line half the second stitch. Right, you like from so a first day pleasure you watching on this and and the site. So for this other on channel on so much enjoy, please look. It made is about us and I'll have a look at your two. I will last